Fargo is an anthology series created by Noah Hawley and is based on the Coen brothers film of the same name. Season 2 of Fargo follows a whole host of characters who become entangled in a mob war between the local Gerhardt family and the Kansas City mob, who are looking to encroach on their turf. Some of the more notable characters of the season are Peggy and Ed, the couple caught right in the middle of the conflict, Lou Solverson, a cop investigating a series of murders, and Floyd, head of the Gerhardt family after her husband suffers a stroke. The conflict between the two factions ups in intensity throughout the season, raising and raising the body count between both sides until a brutal, bloody shootout between the Gerhardt family and the cops at a motel, a massacre so infamous that it is referenced on numerous occasions in Season 1, a sequel to Season 2. Now, Fargo, like the movie it's based on, is a show where things feel off, whether it be the characters, the storyline, or even just the overall mood of the show. Fargo can be pretty weird, dealing with oddball scenarios, but at the same time it remains highly gritty and realistic. With that being said, Season 2 contains the inclusion of something that has pushed the suspension of disbelief to extreme lengths, even by Fargo standards, and that is, well, a UFO, a literal flying saucer. It first appears early on in the season after Ry Gerhardt takes out several characters in a diner. He sees the UFO, becomes distracted by it, and is then hit by a car with Peggy driving. Other instances of the UFO include Hansy seeing it above him, and after checking his watch, he notices a full 2 hours have passed in what seemed like seconds. The most significant appearance is of course during the massacre, in which it plays a pivotal role, distracting Bear long enough for Lou to get a shot at him, and also catching Hansy's attention, allowing Peggy to throw hot water at him. So what's up with the UFO? What's the deal here? Is the flying saucer a representation of something, symbolism, or are fans expected to simply accept that aliens are part of this supposed true story? Of course, the UFO isn't the only reference to life out there in this season of Fargo. There's plenty sprinkled in throughout the season, like a sticker in a shop saying, "We are not alone." And this is really perhaps the easiest and simplest explanation of the UFO, given the time and place it appears in. Fargo gets so much right with the music, the hairstyles, the cars and whatnot of the time period. And aliens and visitors from outer space was very much part of the culture at the time. As bizarre as it sounds, Fargo having a UFO in it actually captures the zeitgeist and spirit of the late 70s in rural America, where there were numerous stories of people being abducted and probed by moon men and curious visitors from space, VHS footage of strange lights in the sky, news reports of crop fields with strange markings. The curiosity of life beyond Earth was very much in full swing, and not just curiosity but full-on paranoia, fueled not just by the hysteria generated by urban myths and hoax, but paranoia from a failing trust in the government and Ronald Reagan post-Watergate, also depicted in the show. There was even a Minnesota deputy sheriff, Val Johnson, who during the same time and location as Season 2 is set in, claimed to have been abducted by aliens. I always felt the appearance of the UFO, or UFOs, ties into something I mentioned in my review of Season 1, where I said it does feel like there is some kind of higher power guiding the events of the show, pushing the characters into a situation and then allowing them to struggle to get themselves out of a predicament. And here we have what might be a tangible example of that. The UFO is crucial to the story, and as such cannot be dismissed as a figment of the characters' imaginations or something. Ry Gerhardt gets distracted by one, leading him to get hit by Peggy and kickstart the events of the season. It also saves Lou from Bear and distracts Hansy, allowing Peggy and Ed to make their escape. Perhaps it's simply the writer's way of having these characters able to achieve things through a memorable way rather than a cliched one, as in, Bear could have been shot at the last minute by an officer, saving Lou's life, but we've seen this in so many films and TV shows. But what we haven't seen is a UFO distracting a cop, allowing him to get the drop on his would-be killer, and here we are talking about it, which is surely the showrunner's intention. It also serves another purpose in that with the whole gimmick of each Fargo episode starting off by telling us the events are a true story, more absurd aspects of the show are made easier to swallow because, well, Compared to a literal flying saucer, not much gets weirder than that, like an established character getting plastic surgery and looking completely different in his appearance in season 1. Difficult to swallow, but probably not too difficult when there are aliens in your show. In fact, it may actually be a kind of meta joke from the showrunners, in that they start each episode by telling us what we're about to see is a true story, which is of course something the Coen brothers did with the movie, mainly so that we'd buy the events of the film more in spite of it being a fictional tale. So maybe it's a case of the show throwing increasingly unplausible and unbelievable things into the show, culminating with a literal UFO, and unashamedly maintaining that it is still a true story, just for a joke. It could also be a reference to the Coen brothers film The Man Who Wasn't There, starring Billy Bob Thornton, who was also in season 1 of the show. At the end of the film, his condemned character finds his jail cell open and walks out seeing a UFO in the sky, but he calmly walks back to his cell. Character reactions in Fargo are not as nonchalant in general, with characters staring in awe, but they tend to quickly move on with their lives. After all, what exactly are they supposed to do about it? Perhaps the only character who makes no reaction at all is Peggy, who tries to snap her husband out of his incredulous reaction, saying, "It's just a flying saucer, Ed." This moment of odd humour probably highlights her warped state of mind, where what is and isn't normal for the rest of us is a bit different in Peggy's world. But in many ways, her reaction is perhaps the best reaction, because ultimately it is just a flying saucer. We just have to accept it. It does exist in this universe. It's part of the true story, as true as anything else in this season, like Hansi becoming Tripoli. And you are forced to accept it and not dismiss it because of its impact on the story. It exists, it's there, and it doesn't have to have a reason to be there. If anything, it perfectly fits in line with the feeling of the Coen brothers and, of course, Fargo. As show creator Noah Hawley said, "In actual history, there's a lot that we understand, and there's a lot of it we'll never understand." You could argue that this season is told by the survivors of the story, all of whom are unreliable narrators with their own biases and vested interests. One of the survivors is Peggy, who is hardly of sound mind. Maybe she would rather not say that she kick-started all of the death and murder by crashing her car into Rye Gerhardt, and instead shifted the blame and told the cops that a flying saucer appeared, distracting both her and the Gerhardt boy. But still though, this is speculation and we cannot account for the UFO, it just is. Hawley has spoken about the UFO saying, "Well, it was part of the moment. Post-Vietnam, it was that both the political paranoia and the conspiracy theories went all the way to the top. With Watergate, that sense that people were feeling paranoid on some level. If you look at the Internet Research Device, there was a state trooper UFO incident in Minnesota in the 70s, which I thought was interesting. And then also Joel and Ethan had included some of those visuals in The Man Who Wasn't There. There was definitely a UFO runner in there. Very early on, I asked, what is our Mike Yanagita? Mike Yanagita was the character in the movie Fargo whom Marge met after being friends in high school, and they had a meal. And he talked about marrying his high school sweetheart, and then she died, and he was so lonely. But then later, you found out he made all that up. And I thought, why is this in the movie? It has nothing to do with the movie, except the movie says this is a true story. They put it in there because it happened. Otherwise, you wouldn't put it in there. The world of Fargo needs those elements, those random, odd, truth is stranger than fiction elements. He's spoken about it elsewhere also, echoing similar points. He has also said he finds the inclusion of the UFO to be funny. And that's interesting because the UFO is of course absurd, but the idea of the absurd, or absurdism in philosophy, is the idea that existence in general is absurd, and links to the idea that humans search for meaning where there is none to be found, making life one big joke, so to speak. There are themes of absurdism in the show sprinkled throughout, and this would mean that when the show creators put an absurd element into this show like a UFO, and people like me make these long video essays frantically looking for the reasoning and symbolism, we are falling for an absurdist joke being played at our expense, since we are looking for meaning instead of getting on with watching the show and being entertained, much like how many of the characters like Lou, who are pragmatic, are able to accept the UFO and not ask the big questions in life. Rather, they push on with what needs doing. And in terms of the UFO itself, if it is indeed aliens sitting in this spaceship staring down below at the characters, I find it interesting that they seem to show up during moments of violence. It's as if they are on a curious safari trip, stopping and getting closer when they see anything interesting, much like how we may stop a car and sit and watch on a safari when we see a lion eating a zebra. So what did you think of the UFO in Fargo Season 2? Do you think it is symbolism for something? Did you like its inclusion, or did it maybe ruin the season for you? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.